皆さんこんにちは、花です。今日、メダリスト第7話を見ています。遅れてごめんなさい。お待ちいただきありがとうございます。先週の質問は、私の最初アニメは何だったと思いますか？答えは、ユリアンアイスです。先週の質問は、コメントにあります。見てくれてありがとうございました。グッドボタンとチャンネル登録よろしくお願いします。What's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel and to another reaction video. Today we are reacting to Medalist episode 7. If this is your first time at my channel, hello, my name is Hannah and I am a former competitive figure skater. I started skating over 20 years ago and also coached for 10 years of that. So I like to say I know a thing or two about skating. Last episode we got to see Tsukasa's backstory about coaching, which was really awesome to see. I think Tsukasa is absolutely my favorite character at this point in the story. I really feel for him and really understand where he's coming from. In my reaction, I kind of talked about how I felt like maybe he wasn't charging Inori, which is kind of on me that I didn't speak upon the fact that I also understood that he only had one student and you cannot make a living off of one student. You cannot make a living until you have like 20 students because it's so expensive and you also have to pay for your own like fees and that sort of thing. There's all kinds of fees for being a coach, for being able to use the ice at an ice rink and all that kind of stuff. So I definitely relate to Tsukasa's backstory because I never got to the point where I could coach full time. For my entire coaching years, which was 10 years, I also had to work another job. Well, I started when I was 13, so I wasn't working another job at first. But once I really started to become a full-time coach, when I was 16, I was also working a restaurant job on the side. And because I had to work that job in order to pay the bills that I had and pay for my own competitive skating, I never was able to quit that job and take on more students because I had to have that happy medium, which meant that my coaching career just kind of fizzled out because I never had the time to actually have enough students to make it full-time. If that makes any sense. You have to be able to quit a job and not work another job, but then you can't pay your bills until you reach a certain level of skaters. So I think in Tsukasa's situation, he needs to have that financial help from this family that's willing to offer it when he doesn't want to, which I understand. But if they're willing to offer it and it seems like they're going to let him live with them or something along those lines, he needs that because I know for a fact I stayed living with my parents my entire time skating because I could not afford it. That being said, before we get into today's video, I wanted to answer a question from a fan, and this question did come in Japanese, so I'm going to read it in Japanese and then I will say it in English. This is for my own studying purposes and helping with my own reading comprehension. I will say when I read this question the first time in the comments, I did still have to translate it because that's just where I'm at with my studies, but I'm going to read it and then say what the translation said. アメリカでフィギュアスケーターが強い地域ってあるんでしょうか？日本だとアニメの舞台にもなっている名古屋シングルのフィギュアスケート選手が強いんでしょうです。And when I translated it, they were asking, is there a particularly strong region in the United States where a lot of skaters compete out of? So in Japan, it seems that Nagoya is a very common place for really well-known skaters to train. So in America, are there places where that happens too? And absolutely, there are 3-ish regions in America, and there of course are exceptions to this. Sometimes skaters will come out of very random places and do very well. However, there are 3 where it's like, okay, these are our world champions, these are our Olympians, these are our national champions. Number 1 is in the case of figure skating, we have like Boston, New York, New Jersey. This is where we have Isabella Vito, who is our current reigning world silver medalist and a national champion. And we have a lot of young and up-and-coming skaters in Boston and New Jersey and that sort of thing. A lot of the skaters that are competing on the international circuit are based out of that area. Another area that's super common is Colorado Springs. Now, Colorado Springs is actually where US figure skating is headquartered, so this is where Amber Glenn skates, who is our reigning 2-time US national champion and the reigning Grand Prix final champion, one of the favorites to win worlds here in a couple of months. We also have some pair skaters from there, and it's just like really well known. A lot of people will travel to Colorado Springs to do altitude training because it's way above sea level and it helps with your stamina, and there are a lot of really well-known coaches there that constantly train Olympians. The final most common region for figure skating is actually Los Angeles. Los Angeles is where I started. I lived in that area when I first started skating, and I literally skated at the rink that Sasha Cohen, the 2006 Olympic silver medalist and 2006 national champion, trained at. She also won the bronze at Worlds that year. That was the rink she trained at. I literally started at the rink that a Olympic medalist trained at. That is also where Nathan Chen trained when he was competitive, and of course Nathan Chen is our reigning Olympic champion. It's where Ashley Wagner trained, who is my favorite skater. She is a 3-time U.S. national champion and the 2016 world silver medalist. It's where Adam Rippon skated, who was the 2016 national champion. And LA, Los Angeles, is kind of known as just being the super hot spot for figure skaters to get their start. While it used to be the number one, I think it kind of shares that with Colorado Springs and like Boston, New Jersey area, but it still is well known as being a really big spot to train. And like I said, there are other areas where good skaters come from, but most commonly, you see our top skaters that are winning medals at Worlds and the Olympics from those 3 areas. Finally, I have received some feedback. A lot of people have actually been asking me to pause even more and to break things down even more. Now, for editing and time purposes, I don't want to add a ton more pausing to my initial reactions just because I try to get these videos out the same day I record, and they already take a long time to edit. So the more I pause and then restart and pause and then restart and talk, the longer it takes for me to edit, the longer it takes for me to post them. So I'm not going to necessarily add a ton more like extra pausing. The way I watch these episodes is I call it when I see it. If there is something specific that I see that I really feel like I need to break down and talk to the audience about, then I do it. So if you want to see more like very in-depth of me breaking down, I've started a new series where I'm going to be taking specific scenes from Medalist and breaking them down like very specifically and constantly pausing and explaining the rules, explaining the points, explaining how the system works. So if you are interested in that, I made a playlist. It's called Medalist Secondary. Go ahead and check that out. I've posted the first one. I'll put it right here. And that is Hikaru's competitive performance from episode 5. I will be posting these weekly so that you guys can get a little bit more experience with some more specifics if you are so interested in getting that deep. I'm getting very deep, so it can be kind of a lot of information, so it's not for everyone. So if you're interested, check that out. The playlist is in the description, and then also let me know if you have any specific requests for me to do. All right, I think we're done with all of the initial talk. Let's get into it, but before we do, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment your thoughts on today's episode. And as always, if you can, please follow me on social media. I am at Hannah Malay on Instagram and at lookingnerdy on TikTok and X, and as always, those are linked in the description below. But with that, let's get into it. Here we go. Oh. Shouting it for everyone to hear. I think everyone did. Such a good opening. Level 1 badge test. Let's go. Mm. 8 points. Wow. Mm-hmm. Yeah, practicing for a test and a competition at the same time. It's hard. Yay! So sometimes when you land a jump for the first time, especially once you start getting into like axel and double jumps, you can land it once for the first time and it's definitely cause for celebration. It's very exciting, but sometimes a skater will land it for the first time, but it doesn't become consistently landed for a while. So it'll take a while before you can like show it off and put it in a competitive program, because jumps are difficult to get consistent. You have to just land it over and over and over and over again. And when you usually get to that point where you can finally land it the first time, it takes a while to get there because your body isn't used to that feeling yet. Up until then, it's only been used to falling or whatever. For me, when I was a skater, I couldn't rotate it fully and I would come down on both feet. That was the way I couldn't land jumps. And then I usually would start to find one foot and then fall and fall and fall and fall and fall. And then eventually I would finally be able to land it, but then it would become a inconsistent jump. So for her, in her situation, she landed it once, which is a great moment. You now know you can do it. However, it usually takes at least a couple of days or a couple of weeks, depending on how talented the skater is. In the case for Inori, she's gotten through all of the other jumps very quickly. In fact, we didn't even get to see it. We didn't get to see her land a single axel, which usually is the first one that takes quite a while. So I would assume I'm just going to say that she's very, very talented in that fact, and because of that, it might just take her a few days before it becomes super consistent. Usually you don't want to put a jump in a competitive program until you're landing it 9 times out of 10 in practice. When you're competing, you're more nervous, your legs are shakier, so you're less likely to land a jump than you are in practice, so you want to make sure that it's like very consistent in practice before it goes in a competitive program. It's very common. Don't feel bad, Inori. It's very common to land it once and then still struggle to land it after that. Oh, we've all been there, Inori. It's like, I landed it, I promise! It's almost always when the coach isn't around, too, that you land it the first time. He believes you. Using the iPad to pause and watch back what you did is a very common coaching technique. Ouch. Okay. Alright, you gotta... It's okay. And that happens a lot in practice. Okay, I'm gonna be pausing probably more than usual today now that I've gotten the feedback to pause more. But in the case of when you're practicing something, there is a time where you just gotta stop and move on. And that's hard to do as a skater because especially if you landed it when your coach wasn't around, and now you're struggling to show it to them. You're like, I swear I did it. I'm not lying. But you eventually have to find a place where you need to stop. You need to move on. Maybe come back to it later. Because the more frustrated you get, usually the more likely you are to start messing with your technique. And then you start getting into the habit of doing the wrong technique because you're annoyed. So you have to know when to stop. And in Inori's case, I think right now, because she's just getting more and more off on her technique, she needs to probably pause, come back to it later maybe. Be okay with you landed it once, it's going to take a little while to be able to keep landing it. I could have just kept going another second. Tsukasa was listening to me. You're your own worst critic in this sport. Yep. You can't rush through things. Yep. Mm-hmm. What? It's not a competition, Tsukasa. Mm-hmm. Nani? New character? Oh, dang. Yeah. She looks even younger. was gonna say, this is now like a ritual for her to make her feel better. Mm. Oh. It's like opposites. So it seems like it's a little bit easier than what she's competing with. She doing it. So it almost looked like a double because I'm going to get really picky here. So when she was jumping, her arms were all the way in here and her legs were like fully crossed. And you don't do that in a single jump. You stay very open in a single jump, especially a single Tsukasa, because it's practically just a half rotation by the time you're actually leaving the ice. So we're taught, even from the very beginning, to kind of rotate with our arms up, because that way when you start to learn the double, going like this is going to immediately help you figure out how to rotate an extra rotation because you're more aerodynamic. So rotating like this on a single jump, I've never met a coach that teaches you to rotate like this. This is specifically saved for once you start doing like a single axle. I guess I'm being picky here, but she should be rotating like this because I watched that, and because it's like an anime and it's not in real time, right? It made me think that she just like threw out a double Tsukasa instead of a single Tsukasa when she just did a single. If that makes any sense. Singles rotate like this, doubles rotate, and triples and the rest rotate like, well, the best rotation is like this. Most skaters can't do that because it's very difficult. Nathan Chen was one of the only ones who can. We usually rotate somewhere like this. Yeah, it looked like an easy test. Oh. But Tsukasa wants to get better too. That is true. When you start out coaching, it's very hard to teach something you know. It's very different to teach something than to just know something. And not everyone's cut out for it. New friends? You have to be willing to be humble like that when you're new. You don't know how to teach everything. I love Tsukasa. You got very nice axle. Yeah, that's like super rare. What is this episode? There's no magic words. Yeah, it's probably hard for him because he did ice dance. That is so true. Okay. That's super relatable. My entire time coaching skating, I was constantly worried that I was teaching it wrong or that I just like wasn't explaining it well enough. And I never even got to the point where I was teaching skaters double jumps. I usually only coach up to like a single Lutz because I did find once I got them past like a single Lutz and into a single axle, my knowledge of how to explain things was severely lacking, and I was working with my coach to try and help figure out how to coach, but that was around the time that I ended up kind of moving on with life and decided that it was time for me to move on from trying to be a coach. So it's something that goes on in your head a lot when you're first starting out is, am I teaching them the right technique? Am I teaching it to them that is a way where they will actually be able to figure it out themselves? Because there's only so much that I can say. I can't physically like throw them into the air and make them do exactly what I say. They have to be able to understand what I'm saying and put that into action when they do it. So it's very realistic. I'm so relating to Tsukasa right now because the entire time I coach, I was very like, am I telling them this right? Am I doing this right? And it can overwhelm you sometimes because you get so worried that you're going to make a mistake and teach them wrong technique that there's like a whole inner battle going on inside your head the entire time. And it's kind of like being very funnily depicted here where it's like, I'm trying to also get better than my student just through coaching. So I like this. This is very relatable to me on the other side of things as a coach. So I'm enjoying this development of Tsukasa. He seems to be very, I've been saying it, he seems to be very natural at it. Yeah, see, she wanted, that was a double, which is the proper rotation position, but a single Saokao, especially if she's so good at it, she would be rotating like this. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. She needs to anchor her head. Yeah. Yeah. Ice dance will do that to you, I bet. Like, if you have a partner that you're constantly trying to keep an eye on and anticipate, you might get better at teaching that because you can anticipate what they're going to do sooner than the average person. Yeah, there is something behind those words. I love this development of Tsukasa as a coach. Mm-hmm. You have special abilities to be able to anticipate what she's going to do. She's going to land it. Here we go. Yay! I was gonna say, okay. I was like, that was not a double Saokao. That was a double loop, which is way harder. So we're again, okay, we're just jumping ahead again. Double loop is quite a bit harder than a double Saokao. The double Saokao is the first one you learn when you start learning doubles, and then you usually need to learn a double toe loop, and then it's double loop. I kind of talked about this in my breakdown of Hikaru's performance when it came to the difference between a loop combo and a toe loop combo. A double loop is way harder than a double Saokao. So I don't know why we didn't even get the payout of landing a double Saokao. We just jumped ahead to landing a double loop. It's fine. It's just like, I know we don't have a ton of time, and maybe they skipped some stuff in the manga, but it's just yet another, like, kind of, oh, okay, we were struggling with landing a double sao cow, but now we're just going to perfectly land a double loop. But we never saw the double sao cow get consistent. Like, we gotta work through the jumps. It's my only issue. The show is doing so good at making things super realistic, and then it just does something like that where I'm like, why did we just jump ahead? Like, we were working towards the double sao cow. Why not have us land the double sao cow and then move on to double loop? And maybe this is just an anime cut from the manga, but I'm not mad. I'm just like, I don't know why that's happening. Oh, is it already? We're about to compete? Okay. A lot of coaches do dress up when it's a competition. A lot of them won't until it's like an international competition. If it's just local competitions like this, they don't really dress up that much. I can feel, again, I'm feeling the nerves. I'm just feeling it. Got lots of very, very big personalities, like just showing up. Man, we're just meeting all these new characters. They all have their fun personalities. Dang. We're really going through the different kinds of competition emotions with these new skaters. Scared, easily angry, super wild and crazy. Yeah, there's a lot of them. Yep. Let's get some warming up done. Take some deep breaths and get ready. You don't want to lose your skates at a competition. Uh-oh. Oh no. With your skates in it. Oh goodness. Where did you leave your skates? Oh my god. I'm so stressed. I can feel the stress. Oh my god. Okay. Alright. So that was episode 7 of Medalist. So I really liked how we focused in on Tsukasa as a coach because, again, that's something I can very much relate to. The whole time I coached, I still felt like a new coach the entire time because I was constantly learning new things about how to coach, and it was like my skaters were growing and I wanted to grow with them. So it's very realistic to ask a coach for their expertise when it comes to learning how to coach. In my case, when I was coaching, I was still also competing, so I just went to my coach. So it wasn't as much of I don't know how to explain it. It wasn't considered, in this situation, he went to a coach that he had never met before and asked for advice. For me, I just always had someone with a lot of knowledge who had been coaching for a very long time that I could just go to easily to ask for advice. So I was very blessed in that way, but it was because I was still trying to compete at the same time. So I was working with a coach for my own skating while I coached younger skaters. It was a wild time. It was a great time in my life. I really enjoyed that time of my life, even though I was always broke. literally always broke. But yes, we seem to have jumped ahead again. So if you have been watching the series, you know that I was a little bit frustrated with the fact that we skipped over learning a single axle and we went straight to doubles, and it kind of confused me at where we were in her journey, because it's just, yes, Inori is very talented, and yes, that does happen to skaters where the months and months that it takes to land a single axle just doesn't happen to every single skater. It happens to a majority of them. In my case, it took me over a year to land my axle for the first time, and then it took me a couple months to be able to land it consistently. And now we've seemed to skip over getting our double Tsukasa consistent, because at the beginning of the episode, we weren't landing it. We had only landed it once, and then we were trying to show that we could land it, but we couldn't, which is very common. But then we just jumped ahead to loop, and usually there's a little bit of time in between from being able to get your double Tsukasa landed pretty consistently to being able to land a double loop. So it was more frustrating because we worked on it so much, but we didn't have a payoff of the double Tsukasa. We went straight to double loop, which is just a little bit weird to me. Everything else about this show is amazing. It just, we keep skipping things that are like very important to the foundation of someone skating. And yes, Inori is talented. Yes, I understand that. So it's natural that she'll work through things a little bit faster than normal, but being able to land a double loop 4 months into skating is kind of wild and very uncommon. So that's just, again, like, I love this. I'm loving this show. There's just like, I'm going to be nitpicky. I'm going to be nitpicky because I'm a figure skater. So I'm going to call out the things that I see that seem to be very like strange to me in the timeline of things. So I'm very happy that she's landing a double loop. It is worth more points than a double Tsukasa. So if she's going to throw that into a competition, which we'll probably see next week, I'm interested to see if they're going to do the double loop and how successful it is. And if that's even allowed. Because the other thing is, I'm speaking based off of my knowledge of US figure skating levels, which is very different from Japanese ones, and I'm actually having a hard time finding like these lower levels for some reason. I'm not exactly sure why. Everything I keep looking up takes me directly to novice A and novice B, and then junior to senior. In the United States, we have all kinds of super low levels that are like the learn to skate levels, which are, you know, you just test through like learn to skate classes and coaches. Once you start having to do actual testing sessions with judges that are testing you, that is, the first one is pre-preliminary. So we start with pre-preliminary, and pre-preliminary, when you test it, you really only have to do like a single Tsukasa and a single toe loop and an easy spin, but competitively, they can go all the way up through a single axle, but that's the highest they can do. Pre-preliminary does not have double jumps. After that is preliminary. Preliminary competitively allows you to do a double Tsukasa and double toe loop and double loop, I believe. If I'm remembering the rules, I don't have the rule book ahead of me, and they change the rules sometimes, but that's preliminary. So to be competitive, you need to at least have like a double Tsukasa and a double toe loop. And then you have pre-juvenile, which pre-juvenile, or pronounced more commonly pre-juvenile, that one, when I was competing, you needed a double Tsukasa, a double toe loop, and a double loop. I believe now it goes, I'm seeing skaters do like double Lutz combos in pre-juve. So again, that's just like a change from when I was in that level. Because when I was in that level, I was in pre-juvenile in 2009. So 16 years ago. Oh my gosh. Okay. That's how long ago I was in that level. To be competitive at pre-juve, you need to have double Lutz, double flip. Juvenile is kind of that middle ground. So juvenile, you are allowed to do double axles, and I believe they're allowed to do triples now. Back when I was competing, again, it was just double axle. That was the highest you could do, but I believe they're allowed to do triple Tsukasa and triple toe loop now. And then after that is intermediate, which goes all the way through triple Lutz now. And then you have novice, which novice is, we don't have novice A and novice B. Novice is just novice, and they are allowed to do triple triples. So they can do like the triple Lutz, triple toe, the triple Lutz, triple loop if they can do it. And then junior is, I think that's where we kind of get similar. Junior is just like you're doing triple triples. In order to be competitive, you need to have triple triples. I believe in the short program, they're not allowed to do a triple axle or higher, but then in the free skate, they're allowed to do triple axles and quads at the junior level. And then senior is, of course, what we see on TV. So triple triples, triple axle, quads sometimes, and that's kind of a breakdown of the levels. I didn't go into extreme detail. If you want me to, let me know. I also will just say I don't have the rule book open in front of me, and the rules do change, and it's been 5 years, 6 years since I competed in single skating, so some of the rules that I just said might have changed and shifted just a little bit, but I do think I've been keeping up with it enough to kind of know exactly what's in it. As far as the Japanese levels, I'm assuming they're level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 is kind of similar to our pre-preliminary, preliminary, pre-juve, juve, intermediate. It's just like split up a little bit differently, and obviously in the level that Inori's in, which I thought was more like pre-preliminary here, which is only an axle, it seems like it's more like preliminary, where they're allowed to do double jumps. So that's kind of a breakdown of it. This video has been super freaking long, so I'm going to stop there. I'm really looking forward to the next episode and see what happens in Kyoto. I'm interested to see if she's going to win or not. I've said before that I think it might be good for her to maybe get second or third this time instead of first. I got first place at every competition I entered in my first year, and that ended up being a curse more than a blessing, because then when I started getting higher levels and it became much more difficult for me to get first place, and I could not rely completely on my talent anymore, it made it much more difficult when I started not getting first place. So I want Inori to see that there is an ebb and flow. Sometimes it's okay to get second, to get third, to not be on the podium at all. And then, that makes winning first place after that all the more sweet. But that is it for today's video. If you like this video, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment your thoughts on today's episode. Also, if you are interested in seeing me break down more scenes, specific scenes in more great detail, let me know in the comments what you want to see from me. And also go to my playlist of Medalist secondary videos where I have started that. And I started with Hikaru's competitive performance from episode 5. You can also follow me on social media at Hannah Malay on Instagram and at lookingnerdy on X and TikTok. But with that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all next week. Mata ne!